This talk goes on the heels of a few other talks. I know Chris's talk last week, and then there was some conversation on Thursday night. We had a discussion about anger, how that manifests in the practice. I had two talks for today. I felt this was more relevant as this one deals with nonviolence in the body of practice. The other one was maybe a little esoteric. It was my second talk on Uji, bean time. So I'll save that for another day. But this one, this is really about addressing everything that arises with what's going on in the world. And I offer this talk for everyone practicing in the midst of their everyday life. We all have families, histories. All have responsibilities. And we all have been exposed to some real suffering in our lives. And this practice is not one to offer us protection from the world. This is practice inside it. Okay? So there are moments when the world enters us violently, where we see images of innocent people abducted, harmed, killed. And these moments don't arise as ideas. We feel them, they arrive in the body. Our chest tightens, our jaws set, our hands clench, our breath shortens. But something ancient arises and says, this should not be happening. And we just keep hearing that, perhaps in our heads, silently. This should not be happening. But our practice does not ask that this response disappear. Our practice asks, what do we do next? And the danger begins when our mind moves ahead of our body and we start to rehearse. We see things and we imagine different outcomes. We imagine ourselves as the savior, the hero, the victim. Or we imagine how those people felt, which is empathy, and that's okay. But we rehearse different outcomes and different stories appear. And different roles take shape in our brain, and many of them archetypal, hero, savior, villain, victim, etc. But a future moment is imagined when clarity will finally be achieved and action will be justified. We always have this vision that justice will prevail. Sounds right. And I know when my daughter was little, she really wanted things to be fair. Everything had to be fair. And I used to say, honey, the world's just not fair. But our minds want this. And we go into this rehearsal that feels comforting or stabilizing because we can't accept the unknown. We can't accept this instability. We can't accept this unjustness. It just doesn't resonate correctly with our understanding or who we think we are or the world is. But at this point, we're already narrowing our practice. But the Buddha was very clear about where ethical weight lives with our practice. He did not place it primarily in the act. He put it in the mind that gives rise to the act. And the Buddha is quoted as saying, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma, having intended one act through body, speech, or mind." It is the intention. So he's talking about even before it became a word, a plan, a story. It was we had an intention, and we created karma, the same karma as if we acted. But this teaching that Buddha gives us is uncompromising. It doesn't ask us what we will do someday. It asks what our mind is cultivating right now, in this moment. Hatred, even when we feel it's justified, it's not neutral preparation. It is already an action of our minds. And the Buddha names this consequence clearly. In the Dhammapada, he says, hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal. And hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. Well, that's pretty much the Dharma talk. This does not say harm should never be stopped. So he's not saying that we shouldn't take action when we see harm. It says hatred is not a tool that leads anywhere wholesome. So we're not just talking about acts of hatred, we're talking about the mental manifestation of a condition. And as lay practitioners, we often hear the precept of non-killing as an impossible demand. To be passive in a dangerous world. And that's killing in all of its facets. Doesn't mean you're physically killing a being, killing an idea, an expression, a feeling, all the forms of killing. But Zen does not teach that. Zen teaches that nonviolence is not a stance. It's not a stance. Because a stance, it's a concept, it's a structure. Nonviolence is a functioning heart. It's who we are. Dogen reframes the precepts not as a rule, but as expressions of awakening. Dogen, for those who don't know, was the founder of our Soto sect. He lived about 800 years ago, and he founded Soto Zen Buddhism. And Dogen says, not committing wrongs, practicing good, actualizing good for others. This is the teaching of all Buddhas. And this is not moral bookkeeping. Do you understand what I say by moral bookkeeping? This tit for tat that goes on in our minds about morality and ethics. This is beyond that. It's a description of a mind that has not hardened. We are not set in our ways. We have a beginner's mind. We're open, we're soft. Because a hatred always hardens the heart. And fantasy always hardens our heart when we drift off and separate ourselves from ourselves. Identity built around righteousness always hardens the heart. Anytime we think we're right. But when that hardening happens, violence has already begun. This is long before any physical act. But the violence doesn't begin with action. And it's not violence applied to others. It begins with a rehearsal. And this rehearsal, internally, it narrows attention. It trains our nervous system and creates enemies. It strengthens the self that wants certainty and control, this knowing. And Dogen names this movement precisely when he says, to carry the self forward and experience myriad things is delusion. Now we've heard to know that Dogen saying to know the self is to forget the self, and to forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. But this is quite different. He says to carry the self forward. This is putting yourself in front. Anytime you think you're leading the world, or even yourself, you're deluded. That's our practice. Our practice is to find ourselves and then forget that self. Violent fantasy is exactly this, carrying the self forward into a role. When we think we're the protector, avenger, decider, moralizer, etc. Practice does not argue with these thoughts, and it does not indulge them. It returns to what is actually happening. When violent images arise, the instruction is simple. Let it go and return to your body. Breathe, find out, where do you feel the charge? Do you feel it in your chest? You feel it in your hands? You feel it in your belly? And name that sensation. Angst, anger, sadness, grief. Just name it, but don't interpret it. Don't add anything to it. And stabilize your posture and breathe. Feel the weight of your body connected to the ground. This teaches our nervous system something essential, that this moment is not the moment of attack. We're not being attacked. Matter of fact, there's nothing happening. There's nothing happening. When we watch the news, there's nothing happening. It's only happening in our minds. When we watch the news and imagine violence, that will protect somebody, that will help somebody, that I have to stop this. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's just in our minds. Only our mind is moving. But when we don't feed the story, the charge rises, peaks and falls. We feel it. It hits us. We feel the adrenaline. And we let it go with the breath. But that's not avoidance. That's our training. That's our practice. And our lay life requires this training because fear, if rehearsed, becomes our identity. It comes before every breath. It's a hesitation. It becomes separate from ourselves. But another question still remains. What if protection is required? Right? What if somebody needs help? But Zen doesn't have an answer for this in advance. How could we? This is a practice of immediacy. Any answer that we can give ahead, or I could give advice ahead, like right now, that would just be dogmatic. That would be ideology. And this is an ideology. Instead, practice teaches us how to feel the difference between violence and fierce compassion. Because the violence narrows us, willows us down. It erases our grief. It might feel energizing, righteous, or clarifying, but it's not. And fierce compassion, that's different. It's strong. It lives within us. It's not reflective. It includes our sorrow. It includes compassion. And we don't feel triumphant or achieved or attained. It just is. So if grief disappears, caution is needed. That's a warning sign. If our identity swells, caution is needed. That's our egos. And if we're definite about something, if we have to be right, if there's certainty, it can be intoxicating. And caution is needed. We really have to look at these things as they arise. Suzuki Roshi warned repeatedly about this subtle danger. Suzuki Roshi said, the most important thing is not to be attached to any idea of yourself. And these are all ideas of ourselves that are external. When action arises from our identity, even if we think we're really principled and justified, and I think we know many people that think they're principled and justified in their identity, then when you're in that place, your practice has already slipped. Protection rooted in hatred poisons everyone involved, including the one who acts. But protection rooted in care may still be tragic, but we don't abandon our hearts. Zen doesn't deny the tragedies of the world. It denies our justifications for them. When action arises from identity, excuse me. I went off my reading for a little bit. When fear and protectiveness arise, our minds want resolution. Our minds want a decision about the future. We want certainty. We want to know. And we create stories to know. But in Zen, we offer something very different. We offer something called vow. And this is not a vow about a promise that about what will happen. I'm going to get you, or something. That's not the type of vow we're talking about. It's not a promise about the future that we make externally. This is a contract we make internally with the future. It's the direction of our heart right now as we align with our vows. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. And Shohako Okamura, he put this really simply. Practice is supported by vow, and vow is manifested by our practice. Without the vow, practice can easily become reactive. It can become self-improvement, self-protection, or self-justification. We build a separate self that practices, and we give that self a moral identity. But the vow, it lives beyond that. Without vow, even nonviolence can turn into a moral identity. You could be a moral crusader who doesn't understand why they crusade, because it's their identity. Vow does not tell us what to do in every circumstance, but it does tell us how to stand in the middle of uncertainty. That's what comes up in our practice. This bodhisattva vow, this vow of compassion. When we have nothing else, that's what arises. And the vow that we're taking isn't that I will never act. I will never take action. The vow is not, I will always know what is right, because how can we? Our vow is simple. Our vow is that we will not abandon life. That we won't poison our hearts. That we don't rehearse hatred. And we don't turn this fear into an identity separate from ourselves. So each time we drop the stories, each time we trust our bodies and breathe and be present, each time we grieve and allow others to see it and feel it, each time we do these things, the self, it's not carried forward. It stops. And that's our vow manifesting as practice. Practice offers no outside vantage point. There's nothing external. There is no place to stand where one remains untouched by consequence. We're fully accountable. We don't have a story about who we are or our actions or the actions of the world. We're present. And we don't promise purity in any sense. There's nothing holier than anything. We're just present. We create presence. That's our practice. Ginjo Koan, actualizing the fundamental point. This moment, with fear, care, and not knowing, is where nonviolence is practiced. Not later, not in theory, right here. And Zen doesn't ask us for certainty. How could we be certain of anything? But we ask for fidelity to our vow, to our practice, and to our lives, just as it is. And this is how fierce compassion serves us every day in our lives, without becoming violent. And this is the entirety of the way in the moment, right now. Okay. Yes, Matt. Hold on, Matt. I think I got to change the speaker here.
It was me, I think.
It is you, but I'm going to put you on a bigger speaker so we can hear you better.
Okay.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm really glad that you brought this up and the way that you did. Um, uh, I personally experience extremely violent fantasies about what I would do if I could get my hands on people who are committing atrocities or in charge of people committing atrocities. And I've been very fortunate as a result of our practice to have made friends with myself. This was something that Jane had spoken about quite a bit, and I haven't heard her discuss it recently. But when she used to discuss it, it made no sense to me. I couldn't understand it whatsoever. And what I did discover is that yes, I could do that. I have friends. I know what it is to be a friend. And why not feel the same kind of feelings towards myself that I would feel towards a friend? And it wasn't the result of any kind of argument I made to myself to become a friend of myself. It just, the feelings of not being a friend of myself dropped away. Okay, how this applies to what you're discussing. When my violent thoughts arise, there was a time in my life where I would have become very critical of myself for that. There would have been an extremely judgmental response to it. And that judgmental response, in a sense, in a minor sense, is a violent response. Not that I wanted to hurt myself as a result of having those thoughts. And forgive me if I'm going on and on about this, but I think it's important because of how it ties in with your talk. There's just this feeling that the thoughts arose. That's all. The thoughts arose. It's not a problem that the thoughts arose. It's only a problem if I try to suppress them. It's only a problem if I judge myself for them. It's only a problem if I make if I act in a way as to make them occur. Those are problematic things. The thoughts themselves are not problems. And trying to suppress them, judging them, simply aggravates the situation. And because I'm a friend to myself, they fall away. I let them go. They're just an occurrence. They're just an occurrence. And so when I'm sitting or when I'm out and about, not sitting, and those thoughts occur to me, if I'm looking at the news, those thoughts occur to me, or I'm not looking at the news, they arise and they leave. And that's where our practice leads us to. And I'm extremely grateful for it. And I'm extremely grateful that you brought this up, and especially the way that you did. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think the main point here is that our thoughts are karma. Our intentions are karma, whether we act on it or not. And how do they manifest negatively in the world? Through us, because we're tainting ourselves. We're coloring ourselves in that dye. Whether we express it or not, whether we act on it or not, that's what we're feeling in our hearts. Don't carry hate in your heart. That's it. Don't carry hate in your heart. Just let it go. Don't serve it tea. Yes, Mike.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mike.
Okay. Kind of a between what you've talked about today and what we were discussing on Thursday, can anger ever be accepted as a form of compassion in our reaction to what we see, and this emotion that just jumps up before we can even grab it, and that anger we experience when we watch people suffering? Can we accept that as a form of compassion but have to restrain it, or do we want to try and not get into that emotion?
I think we talked about this on Thursday. Anger's not a primary emotion. Anger's not even something we talk about in the Eightfold Path. It's not any of our precepts. I won't be angry. It's because all the other precepts can manifest anger if not applied properly. So trying to restrain anger and giving anger an identity is giving it form. Practicing and letting go and acting ethically in accordance with your vow, you'll find you won't be angry. But the whole thing is, when anger occurs, feel it in your body and say, that's anger, that's grief, that's sadness, and let it go. Don't, well, that's angry, I'm angry because, and it's that because that gives us identity. There's no because. You're just angry. Let it go. Because that because turns into a justification, turns into a story, and does turn into hatred. Because where can it go? We need to find some clarity. The self needs to find this moral high ground, this self-righteousness. And if we can't find it, we just create a story out of cognitive dissonance that aligns with our story, or our religion, or our ethics, or whatever we believe we are. But let that go. None of that matters. They're all concepts, Mike.
Can I ask a supplemental question on top of that?
It'll cost
Is
you.
always okay. Is letting go to me sometimes comes across as indifference. And there's where I get confused in this
Mm.
whole thing is, I'm trying to ask this as a question, but it can't really come out that way. But that's the thing I fear is when I sit there and say, okay, look, you got to calm down and stuff. All of a sudden, this thing jumps up and says, well, you're just being indifferent to the situation, which is kind of a scary thought.
Sounds like you're having a conversation, Mike. Letting go is not apathy. It's intimacy. Again, if you're able to connect with your breath, find it in your body, identify it, you're actually being present and intimate with yourself. And you're being as compassionate as you can to yourself because this anger is only going to make you suffer and someone else suffer around you. Okay? So it's not nihilism. It's not apathy. It's intimacy. It's connection. That whole story about, how I'm removing myself from the world and apathetic, and that's a story. It's getting in the way of your breath. Let it go. When I say let it go, I mean it in the best way. Yes, Mark.
Just wanted to ask, you talked a little bit about how, sometimes anger can fuel action in a positive way. Or maybe that's not anger that's fueling the action.
You're mischaracterizing anger for fierce compassion, maybe, or fierce intention, or enlightened intention. Anything, anger arises from something else, and anger arises from the self. Okay? Selves try and create outcomes. Yeah, that's anger. You get angry when you don't get your way. Why? You get angry when the world doesn't correspond to your views. Why? But if you wanted to get something done, if you're angry, it usually just wears yourself down to the point that you reconcile with yourself, and then you resign, you become yourself, and then you could get things done. Anger doesn't get much done except drain us and, create karma. The difference between anger and fierce compassion is, one is moving yourself, pushing the self forward and creating karma that for you and others. And the other is maybe you're creating good karma and erasing karma. Shosan said, karma works from the present to the past. So maybe good intentions and letting things go erases your past actions and karma because it only lives in your mind and in your heart. And if you could let that go, you're healing. Does that make sense? I think it's fundamental that we not be angry and that we not try and justify anger. There's so many ways to justify our anger as righteous because my practice, because they don't understand, because let it all go. Who is it that benefits from the anger? The self. We're just creating form out of anger. So anytime you're building these structures, you feel it. It doesn't feel good. But it takes the practice to feel it as that twinge in your breath, and then you're like, oh, that's what that yucky feeling is. And I'll let that go. Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Tiffany?
Sure. I thought this was really well timed. I read this morning, Mako, who's the abbot of City Center, and their account of spending time in Minneapolis. I don't know if they're still there or whether they've already come back. But they put a really succinct and heartfelt response about what good action looks like in these sorts of situations, and I really appreciated that, and I thought it was really good to read before I came here today. So I just wanted to put that out there, and it's on the website. And I thought it was like a really good concrete example of what.
Well, tell us what good action looks like.
Yeah, I mean, basically, they were there with about 800 other religious figures in Minneapolis, of all different types of faiths, and what that looked like was being physically present and being compassionate to people that were suffering, and to be a presence of calm and kindness, and just in being and just in existing in that state, in physical presence with others. It's almost as if words weren't necessarily even all that important. Just the physical act of being there with everyone else,
right,
and standing proud in their vow, right? Like that's what I think Mako basically attempted to do, and I was extremely grateful for the effort that they put out to do that. It was very humbling.
Yeah. Well, why did Chris wear his rock suit at the demonstration last week?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's his vow. That's how he shows up in the moment.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yep.
It's just on and on and on. Nothing to achieve, nothing to attain. And they showed up. They are who they are because they're their vow.
Right.
And they acted appropriately in the moment. And people felt that. Right? There's nothing else to it.
That's still hard though.
Yeah. You didn't see any of them grab a microphone, and that wasn't it.
Spencer.
Yeah.
Yes, honey.
I think that, on Thursdays when we do our meditation, it's we hold space. We hold space for all the suffering that's going on in the world, and that's all we can do is be present for that suffering, for all that's going around, and much to what Tiffany was saying is and what Chris does when he goes and when he's physically there at these protests is holding space, and being present for that suffering in that moment and in this moment.
Yeah.
That's important.
Well, I think we hold space for those who can't, or who can't right now, right?
Right.
And that's the practice. Yes, Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to just sort of come back to or sort of address what you said about me wearing my rock suit at the demonstration, because that's what my vow is. And so one thing I wanted to reiterate, that's the first time I tried it. It was last week, Friday. And, I didn't really do it because of my vow. The vow I took does not say anything about the dress code. I needed to try it out for myself. And there's another one I'm going to today in the city I live in. And I'm intending just to show up in civilian clothes and nothing more. And it's because I'm really trying to examine what is going on both internally and what effect the visibility as clergy has on the movement. On Monday evening, I was in attendance virtually with a group called Next Gen Zen. It's based in Sebastopol, and Chris Fortin was there, and she kind of gave a talk about, I forget what the general topic was, but somehow it was related to all this stuff, or at least the Q&A kind of digressed into that. In any case, she kind of said something that really focused my attention on the open question I have about sort of bringing my identity, mixing it with being a Buddhist, and then doing something with that in the actions that are, it could be called political, but it's really trans-political at this point. But regardless, what she asked was, she was saying, she was looking around at a lot of these demonstrations, and she was like, where are the Buddhists? And my reaction was, well, they're there with you. I've been going to these things for a while. A lot of the people I know who are Buddhists have been going to these things for a while. We're just not advertising. And it made me wonder, like, why is she worried about whether Buddhists are showing up in garb or holding signs like, I'm a Buddhist and I'm opposed to this? It's like, you could just say, I'm opposed to this. That's fine. Are we adding something when we say we're a Buddhist and we're opposing to this? Or is it we're just experiencing some FOMO because we see someone else show up and some group showing up and be like, Temple Beth David opposes this whatever, and we're like, oh, our identities are tied up with Beginner's Mind Zen Center, and we want to show that our team is also part of this team, but actually really all that does is, so anyways, point is, this is a really, really open question in my mind that I've been sort of dancing on both sides of, and I'm not sure if trying to resolve this dialogue is possible, is worth doing, and is worth the energy I'm giving it, which is sort of just a rephrasing of the second point I had. But in any case, I just wanted to sort of jump in and clarify why I was wearing my Roxu last week, and that's the only time so far that I've done it.
Well, okay. Well, not to comment because I didn't hear the whole Dharma talk, but it does sound like some next gen Zen when we're separating ourselves from other Buddhists, and our practice is what it is. And this robe, this okesa, the Roxu, what does it say? Saving all beings. That's it. Why do I wear it? Why does it give me comfort? Because I take refuge in it. Okay, it's the practice. It's the essence of the practice. Buddha wore that robe. We wear that robe 2,700 years later. Exactly to that specification. Why? Because it's our vow. And that's it. I'm just not answering you. I'm answering her question. It's like, why do we all sit? Because of our vow. Do we have to be out in a protest? Well, maybe if it suits us, but that's up to us. Do you have to wear a Roxu? No. But if it suits you like it would suit me, like it gives me comfort, then yes. But there's no differentiation. The practice is pure. It's just practice. We don't have to qualify it. We don't have to create a verification or a purity test of our practice. That's not our practice. That's the antithesis of our practice. Okay?
Joel has a question.
Oh, hi, Joe.
Hi, Spencer. Okay, well, thank you for your talk. It was very powerful and moving for me. And in fact, I, I'll be in touch. I want to speak to you about it in all sorts of ways. Uh, and I was very uh, taken with vow in this whole context. Um, and so we can talk about that. I mean, it's stuff I've really been struggling with. Uh, so it's hard. I mean, I just had a kind of reaction to what Chris was just saying about wearing his rock suit. Um, and yeah, forgive me, Chris. Maybe this could be totally off. Um, and it seemed to me like you said something. I didn't do it because of that, and my immediate reaction in my head was, "Of course you did it because of that." And I might be wrong. And as far as the next demonstration, it might be good for you not to wear it because you're investigating, you're discerning. Um, but I just keep coming back to those monks in the South. They're wearing their robes full time and they're manifesting, we are Buddhist monks and we need to do this because we believe in peace. And that's all they're saying. And for me, it's just so inspiring. Um, and it was interesting. I heard a talk by their leader on YouTube last night, which is very kind of tough to this crowd of people who were just coming out and very moved. And he was just saying, you know, um, there was this guy at the time of Buddha who came to every talk of the Buddha. He was always there. And he never really asked a question or anything. He was just always there. And then one time he came up to the Buddha and asked, how am I close to you? He said, and Buddha said, no, you're 10,000 miles away from me, because you're not engaging, you're not connecting. Um, and and so he was saying to the people, well, you could come and you can hear me speak and you can have tears, but you got to practice ultimately, which for him is just simply mindfulness of the breath, basically. Just be there. And so it was a very tough talk in a way to these people who, to say they're new to practice is almost maybe an exaggeration. They're first hearing this mindfulness of the breath. What are you talking about? Anyway, this I feel is very incoherent, but I just had these reactions, and so take it for what it's worth. But I was very moved.
Yeah, well, look, you could wear your robes like they do. That's who they are. Or
Yeah. Or you
look,
can't. You don't have to.
I knew somebody who used to wear their roxu and walk through a cemetery on Memorial Day, and that was different. They were showing they were separate from their roxu.
Hmm.
Okay, but there would be a way to walk on Memorial Day with your roxu to be one with that. I'm not saying that's wrong. It's a beautiful thing, but it's how you wear it.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. I mean, one person could wear it one time and it's not with their vow, and another person could wear it and it is with their vow, and the same person could wear it and one time it's with their vow and the other time it's not with their vow.
but
Anyway,
but it's always with your vow when you wear it, and when you don't wear it.
that's right. You're always with your vow. Anyway, it's
Huh?
incoherent, but there you have it.
No, I get you, but I don't
Yeah.
mean to be off
No,
on the Zen paradoxical angles here. So,
Zen paradoxical angle is great.
all right. Yes, Jane, I will move the camera for you.
I think
Yeah, right, that's a good thing.
I really enjoyed your talk today, Spencer, because the vow is so really important subject to discuss always. But I was often thinking while you were talking about Suzuki Roshi's, one of his sayings was, when you bow, the whole world bows. And I've always thought of that as meaning that everything in the world is you, so when you bow, everything moves with your action. And then I thought, actually, he was talking about vow, that when you want to change things, you just really continue with your practice without, you're strict with yourself, with your emotions, with your mind, and you're strict with your form of practice. And you wear your Raksu anytime you want, but the Raksu is also bowing to the Buddha in service and just wearing it. It's a mosquito.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I think what he was talking about when he said, when you bow, the whole world bows with you, I think he was saying that's what vow means. So you never sidestep your practice, you always put your whole heart and soul into practice. And if you're really concerned about anything, pardon me, then you especially practice, especially sit. So I thank you for your talk, because vow is always a good subject. You do take a vow when you are ordained. And my teacher in Japan, Mrs. Chiba, Peter and I went to see her every month for 22 years. And sometimes we'd travel together with her. But she said one time when I hadn't been wearing my robes for a while, she said, somebody said to me, well, you're not being a good Buddhist when you do that. She said, that's not what a good Buddhist means. When you take the vow, you're wearing your robes, whether you have them on or not. You can never take them off. That's what vow means. And when you realize that, then you give your whole self to practice as well. Knowing that you can never take the robe off once you put it on with vow. So that really changed my mind about what robes mean. So even if Chris, even if you go on a walk or a demonstration with people and you don't have any robes on at all, you're still wearing all of your robes, whether people see them or not. And your demeanor and your practice as you do it is your explanation of the robe. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Jay.
Another mosquito just.
I know.
I think it's a gnat.
No,
And then there's some mosquitoes.
when it gets in your hair, it sits by your ear, it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, Rachel.
Thanks. Thanks, Spencer. Back to the twisted human being. Behind a vow can be really a shocking multiplicity of intentions. And that's what I find so absolutely basic and essential about practice, just sitting down and maybe keeping your mouth shut. The mind, however, is very reluctant to follow, is that, what is, I think you'll know what I mean. What is fascinating to me is the value in just even pausing. I don't mean even officially sitting, but just pausing, reflecting, observing, meditating, whatever you want to call, making a stab at looking at what the thoughts are, or the structure of the thoughts and the attitude of the mind that is coming up with the thoughts. Because the attitude of the mind has a lot to do with the thoughts that get generated, don't you think? But what I want to say is, if you take that time, well, Chris referred to it, he's and investigating really, you know, what he does intend. What can appear to be anger, you know, it's like a bloom, a multiplicity of intentions, and it can be fear, can be like with the March G. Your dad marched 40 years ago. Aren't you going to do something? Can be disappointment. You didn't show up 10 years ago. Do you, your neighbor, what did they do? Someone of a different faith, they showed up and seemed at cross purposes with what that faith purports and what they were, how they were behaving. My only point is the basics and the beauty and the honesty of practice, of really having that, what, don't know mind. Everyone comes to conclusions. I mean, at least anyone I know does. And, but if you can have, you can pause and have, I wonder. Then when you do settle on some intention, then it might be a more educated understanding both of, and I don't mean analysis, I don't mean that. I mean just a simple, more understanding reading of the emotional or the thought territory, and also what action to take. I mean, just sitting is just magnificent.
Well, I agree. Thank you.
Well said.
All right, it's time for service.